All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a place with a pretty grim nickname, Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires. For centuries, it seems like every superpower that goes in fails. But we're not going to start with the past. We're going to start with a number that could completely change everything for its future.
$3 trillion. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That's the estimated value, and that's a conservative estimate, by the way, of the untapped minerals just sitting under the ground in Afghanistan. We're talking iron, copper, gold, but the real prize? Rare earth metals.
And that brings us to the jackpot. Get this. A Pentagon memo from 2010 flat out called Afghanistan the potential Saudi Arabia of lithium. And you know how important lithium is, right? It's in everything. It powers our phones, our laptops, the electric cars that are supposed to be our future. So you'd think, with that kind of treasure buried under its feet, Afghanistan would be one of the richest, most prosperous nations on the planet.
So, why isn't it? Why is the reality so different? To really get at that paradox, let's look at two pictures. You've probably seen this first one. It's from 1985, right in the middle of the Soviet war in Afghanistan. This image, this girl's face, became world famous. For so many people, this was the face of Afghanistan, a symbol of suffering, but also of incredible resilience.
Okay, now let's jump forward almost 4 decades. The pictures are different, yeah, but the story? It's hauntingly familiar. This time, it's not the Soviets leaving, it's the Americans. After 20 years of war, it ends in this chaotic, desperate withdrawal from Kabul. It's a new generation, a different superpower, but you look at it and you can't help but feel we've seen this movie before.
And that right there, that's the eternal paradox. How does a country sitting on $3 trillion of wealth get stuck in this endless loop of invasion, retreat, poverty, and war? It just doesn't add up.
I mean, this isn't a new thing. We're talking about a pattern that goes back centuries. The British Empire, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, the United States, all of them at the very height of their power march into Afghanistan thinking this time will be different. And every single time, they're forced to retreat, completely exhausted and often humiliated. So let's try to figure this out. Let's really dig into the mystery of the graveyard of empires.
Okay, so first things first. Why does everyone want Afghanistan in the first place? To get to the answer, we have to understand what drew all these empires there. And here's what's fascinating. For most of history, it had absolutely nothing to do with that mineral wealth we just talked about. So we actually have to get rid of some common ideas people have.
So what are the usual suspects? You might think, okay, it's got to be about trade routes, right? Like the old Silk Road. Well, nope. For the last 500 years, global trade has been all about the sea, and Afghanistan is completely landlocked. All right, so what about oil and gas? That's the other big one. Again, no. Its neighbors, Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, they have way, way more. The easy economic answers just don't work here. So if it's not about the obvious stuff, what is it? Well, this brings us to the first major clue in this whole puzzle. For centuries, the answer wasn't about what's inside Afghanistan's borders. It was about where those borders are. You know that old saying, geography is destiny? Well, for Afghanistan, that's not just a saying. It's its curse and its fate. Just look at a map. It is the one and only significant land bridge that connects 3 incredibly important parts of the world. Central Asia with all its resources, South Asia with its huge markets like India and Pakistan, and the Middle East with its ports on the Persian Gulf. It's the ultimate strategic hallway. And that unique position turns Afghanistan into this incredible geopolitical prize. It's like the playground game King of the Hill. If you can control that piece of land, you can influence everyone around you. India, Pakistan, all of Central Asia, and even Russia. And that is why, for century after century, empires have looked at that spot on the map and thought, we need to control that.
Okay, so that explains why everyone wants in. But it doesn't explain why they always fail. For that part of the story, we have to stop looking at maps and start looking at the people who actually live there.
And the first thing you have to get your head around is that there isn't really one single Afghan people, in the way you might think of, say, the French or the Japanese. It's more like a complex patchwork quilt. You've got Pashtuns, Tajiks, Hazaras, Uzbeks, dozens of different groups, tribes, and languages, all with their own deep histories and loyalties. So an invader can't just conquer a capital city and say, we're done. No, you have to pacify 1,000 different valleys, and that's a whole different ballgame. And this is where we get to the absolute core of why it's so hard to conquer. A young Winston Churchill, who was actually stationed there way back in the 19th century, he just nailed it. He wrote that the tribesmen will fight constantly amongst themselves, but the second a foreigner shows up, they all unite against that common enemy. The one thing that brings everyone together is kicking out the invaders.
So, invading armies learn this lesson the hard way. They're not there to fight another army on a battlefield. They're fighting an entire population of guerrilla fighters. And the math just doesn't work for the superpower. Think about the Soviet invasion. The US gave the Afghan fighters these simple Stinger missiles, and every time they used a $40,000 missile to shoot down a $10 million Soviet helicopter, the empire just bleeds. It bleeds money, it bleeds equipment, and it bleeds morale. You just can't win a war like that. But here's the thing. Even when a nation is losing a war, some people are always winning. And this is where the story takes a really modern and, honestly, a pretty cynical turn. So let's follow the money. Because while countries are losing lives and treasure, some people and companies are making an absolute fortune. Look at this. The CEO of a major defense contractor pulling in $75 million in bonuses. A company getting over $5 billion just to supply food. Private military contractors making over $1 billion. You start to realize that for a certain slice of the economy, a forever war isn't a failure. It's a fantastic business model. So here's the cycle we've laid out. You've got this piece of land that's so strategic, empires can't resist it. You've got a population that will never stop resisting them. And you've got a modern war machine that actually profits from the conflict never ending. It's a vicious circle. So the big question is, could anything ever break it? Well, maybe. And it might just be the very thing we started this whole explainer with, that $3 trillion in the ground. But before we look to the future, it's really important to take a second and remember the past. A past that might surprise you. On the left, that's Kabul in the 1960s. You see tourists at the airport, women walking down the street in stylish dresses. It was actually a famous stop on the hippie trail to India. Now look at the right. That's the image most of us have today. The point is, a peaceful, modern, prosperous Afghanistan isn't some crazy fantasy. It's a memory. It happened.
And that leaves us with one final, really big question for the future. You have new players on the scene now, like China, and their approach is totally different. They're not talking about invasion. They're talking about business deals, mining rights, building infrastructure. So is this the start of a brand new chapter? Will that $3 trillion in lithium and gold finally be the thing that breaks the cycle and brings stability? Or is this just the beginning of a new great game? One fought not with soldiers, but with contracts and economic leverage for control of the crossroads of the world.